My husband's attitude and words have gone back to how they were before. I consulted with my parents and bought this house for them. My husband just barged in from the side and made various demands. I can't believe he would betray me like this, and in front of my parents no less. This is the home for us as a married couple and my mom. We've decorated it to my mom's taste. It's your responsibility for bringing them here without permission. That's why I'm gonna live here with my mom. I'm sorry for your parents, but from now on, they'll have to go into a nursing home. My name is Jennifer, and I'm a 28-year-old. I've been working as an editor at my current workplace since I graduated. I decided to attend a university in Boston that I had admired for a long time, so I studied hard with all my might. I left my sickly mother and elderly father behind and forcefully flew the coop because I wanted to try living on my own, so I thought I had to achieve results that matched that decision. My mother said, "You want to have various experiences while you're young," and sent me off, but I think deep down, she wanted her only daughter to stay by her side. When I was in my second year of working after graduating from university, my father had to retire due to a leg injury. Now, they're relying on my father's savings, my mother's side job income, and their pensions to get by. When my father, who had worked at a pharmaceutical company for a long time, was about to retire, he apparently fell into a terrible depression. When I received a call from my mother with those details, I suggested temporarily quitting my job and returning to my hometown. However, a few days later, I received a direct call from my father about the matter, and he said, "I'm not old enough yet to be worried about my child. Why don't you think about getting married soon and giving us peace of mind?" I immediately understood that my usually brusque father was saying that out of reverse love. After that, I met Kevin, and 3 years after we started dating, we decided to get married. My mother happily told me that my father said, "I need to stay healthy until I see my grandchild's face," and started exercising more enthusiastically than ever before. Also, my mother was similarly overjoyed about the marriage, and I thought that was the first time I had done something that could be considered filial piety. I met Kevin at a friend's wedding. We worked at the same company, but as an editor and an engineer, we didn't have many chances to see each other. Kevin, who happened to be sitting next to me at the reception, started talking to me after we found out we both liked video games. I was busy that day helping with the wedding preparations, so I couldn't pay much attention, but Kevin helped out efficiently. For me, who was flustered and couldn't do anything, he was like a savior. I had little dating experience, so I quickly became interested in him, but Kevin, who had a gentle personality and was well liked by everyone, was popular at work too. Even my department had heard rumors about him. There were many people more attractive than me, but Kevin said he could be himself when talking to me and asked me out. At that time, I felt like I was walking on air, and I thought there was no greater happiness. However, I noticed something was off about my husband when we visited his mother's house a month after getting married. My husband and mother-in-law acted overly close to adults, constantly touching each other. My husband touched his mother's shoulders and head, and his mother touched his back and arms many times. It was an excessive amount of physical contact. I understand that there are various types of families in the world, and since Kevin's father passed away when he was little, I can kind of understand the parent-child bond becoming stronger. If that was all, it would have been fine, but my husband said something unbelievable in front of his mother and me. "By the way, Jennifer really liked that cafe you picked out too, Mom. She even remembered to order the parfait you said was your favorite. It was delicious, wasn't it, Jennifer? Oh, that shop? It has a nice, relaxing atmosphere, doesn't it? Apparently, all your dates so far have been to places I chose. I picked them from a woman's perspective, so you could enjoy them without hesitation, right? The place where you got the ring was romantic too, wasn't it? Kevin and I simulated it together. It turns out that everything from our date spots to the place where he proposed was decided in advance by his mother. On top of that, I heard that my husband even consulted his mother about the words he would use to propose, which made me feel nauseous and gave me goosebumps. I couldn't believe he had rehearsed proposing to me with his mother. I was shocked to learn so many things I didn't want to know. Seeing my husband innocently say, "Mom is never wrong," made me realize that he had an extreme mother complex. Why couldn't I notice such an important thing while we were dating? If I had known about this from the beginning, I would have been more careful about getting married. But this must have been his mother's scheme too. When my husband went to the bathroom and I was alone with his mother, she said to me, "I can pretty much guess what you're thinking right now. That boy has always done whatever I say. If his bride found that out before the wedding, she might have called it off, right? In the past, I was so smitten with him that I was mean to his girlfriends, but I've started wanting to see my grandchild's face. I love my son, but I'm sure I'll love my grandchild even more. I don't care about you, his wife, but at least give birth to an obedient child." I had already told my mother-in-law about my parents. If I told my parents, who innocently celebrated our marriage, that we got divorced after just 1 month, what kind of face would they make? Plus, it's my fault for not properly checking the situation around me because my head was in the clouds with happiness about marrying Kevin. Since I hardly ever fought with my husband, I thought we could have a smooth married life if I avoided visiting his parents' house as much as possible. However, as if she saw through my feelings, my mother-in-law frequently dropped by our apartment. If I tried to refuse to let her in by making up some excuse, my husband would hurriedly intervene, seat his mother in the living room, and chat with her for a long time. When my husband wasn't home, she would thoroughly check every corner of the house, nitpicking that the cleaning was insufficient or that I bought food with the expiration date approaching, putting mental pressure on me. Even when I complained about this to my husband, he didn't take it seriously, saying, "That's part of mom's way of educating you." Far from it, without me noticing, my husband and mother-in-law had arbitrarily made plans, and before even a year had passed since our marriage, I ended up seeing his mother every day. My mother-in-law ordered me around all day and didn't allow me a moment's rest. The only time I could escape from her surveillance was when I was in the bedroom, so I didn't really have any time to think by myself. How many times did I consider going back to my parents' house while out shopping? But every time I read the heartfelt letters that regularly arrived from my parents, my heart tightened and I couldn't make the decision. I told myself I shouldn't get divorced over in-law problems and tried to pretend to be the perfect wife on the surface. However, the more I endured, the more my mother-in-law complained about trivial things and treated me like a nuisance. My husband only obeyed his mother and showed no sign of protecting me. Even when I came home, there was no welcome back, and I was immediately swamped with dishes and laundry. Despite that, if his mother stood in the kitchen and washed a cup, my husband would immediately help her and complain to me, "Don't make mom do this kind of thing." I saw his mother washing dishes slowly and conspicuously, and I felt disgusted by her grinning and enjoying the sight of my husband scolding me. As I gradually became unable to tolerate this situation, my head was filled with thoughts of divorce. But then, a fateful turning point arrived. One day, a single letter arrived from my mother. Usually, vegetables harvested at my parents' house were sent along with the letter, but this time, it was just the letter. Reading the letter made me feel uneasy. It said that an illness was discovered during my mother's health checkup, and she was hospitalized. Although she was expected to be discharged, the letter stated that the doctor had declared she would no longer be able to work. Sensing that this was a serious matter, I immediately decided to return to my parents' house. When I told my husband about my mother's situation, he also looked worried and said, "I'll talk to mom about it." Thanks to that, I was able to leave the house without any worries. When I returned home, my father looked surprised but happy to see me. "I'm glad you came. Is mom okay?" "Yes, for now, at least." When I asked about my mother's condition, my father made a gloomy face. I immediately went directly to the hospital where my mother was admitted and asked to see her. Although my mother looked energetic at first glance, the four connected to her arm stirred up my anxiety. If my mother can no longer work, my parents' income will be limited to their pensions. Fortunately, my mother had life insurance, so they will receive insurance money for the time being, but those funds aren't infinite either. I couldn't just stand by and watch my parents live with financial insecurity from now on, so I proposed living together on the spot. At the same time, When I revealed that I had decided to divorce, my parents were naturally surprised. When I explained to them the treatment I had received from my mother-in-law and how my husband was at her beck and call, they understood my decision to divorce. So that's what happened. I'm sorry for not telling you anything. No, I'm the one who should apologize for not saying anything. If you'd like, why don't we build a two-family house and live together? I made that proposal to my parents. Since I had been going back and forth between home and work almost exclusively since getting married, with no time for leisure, I had quite a bit of savings. If I used that money for the down payment and got approved for a mortgage, I could probably sign a contract for a new house. My mother reacted happily to this idea. However, since my mother had just been hospitalized and the house hadn't been sorted out yet, and my divorce wasn't finalized, this plan was put on hold for the time being. If I was nearby, it would be easier to support their daily life and I could respond immediately if anything happened. I thought that if my husband was going to take care of his mother to that extent, I could make a move like this too. After that, I spent a few days at my parents' house and spent some leisurely time with my father for the first time in a while. My father said something very reassuring about the divorce. How things turn out will have a big impact on your life going forward. Your thinking might change again after more discussions. No matter what decision you make, if you're happy, we'll support you with all our might. Hearing those words, on the day I returned to the house with my husband and mother-in-law, I demanded a divorce. I'm thinking I want a divorce. What? Why all of a sudden? Did I do something? My husband was clearly shaken. Thinking this would be the last time, I carefully explained the situation. I couldn't forgive my husband's attitude of not only saying nothing and just watching while his mother bullied me, but also conspiring with her to make me the bad guy. If his mother is the most important, he should just stay with her, and there's no need for me to be his wife. I told him I wasn't needed in this household. Then, my husband started crying while trembling. Did he think I would comfort him just because he was crying as an adult? I just stood there and waited for him to calm down. I don't want a divorce. Please reconsider. I'm begging you. From now on, I'll listen to what you say and make Mom stop being hard on you. I'll fix everything that I did wrong. I'll reflect on it, so give me one more chance. My husband said that. To be honest, hearing him plead like that, I still had some feelings for him. I thought my husband would be the ideal partner if his mother wasn't there, and it didn't sit well with me to get divorced and let things go as his mother planned. Remembering my father's words, I started wavering again about whether it was really okay to decide to divorce in front of my husband. Maybe if my husband kept his promise and made his mother stop bullying me, we could go back to our happy daily life. Since he had exposed his emotions to that extent and cried, his sincerity must have been genuine. I made up my mind to accept my husband. I'll believe you and start over one more time. But if it doesn't work out this time, that's it. I don't want to worry my parents anymore. Having decided that, I chose to forgive my husband just once. But I decided to attach a condition. I was planning to build a new house for my parents. I planned to pay the down payment with my savings, and if the loan was approved, I would also handle those payments. So I told my husband I wanted the new house to be in my name and to live together with my parents. If he couldn't accept that, I intended to divorce. However, he agreed without objecting. Normally, it would probably be in the name of the higher-earning husband, but I wanted to prevent his mother from barging in and declaring, "My son's house is my house." So I decided to eliminate that risk. When I stated that the deed would be in my name, my husband didn't question it at all. Rather, he eagerly said, "I want to cooperate so your life improves too. I haven't been able to do anything for you until now." Furthermore, he even said that if we were building a new house, he wanted to interact more with my parents. I felt a little uncomfortable with my husband's attitude of suddenly cherishing my family after the topic of divorce came up, but thinking that he disliked divorce that much, I felt kind of happy at the time. My mother-in-law's attitude remained condescending toward me and didn't change, but my husband stopped joining in on the bullying like before. Because of that, she seemed dissatisfied. I didn't know the specific reason why my husband's attitude changed, but thanks to that, my mother-in-law settled down and my stress was greatly reduced. Since the area was relatively urban and close to a hospital, at my husband's suggestion, the new house was decided to be near our current home. My husband actively participated in the real estate procedures and placed orders with particular preferences for the interior for my parents who had difficulty moving. Originally, I hadn't been concerned about the upper limit of the budget, so I accepted my husband's proposals without being stingy. I was happy thinking that it would lead to a comfortable second life for my parents. I felt genuine joy. As we held more meetings, time flew by, and about a year after we first visited the real estate agency, the house was finally completed. It was the right timing for a new life to begin. My mother, who had been successfully discharged from the hospital, dragged my father and me to the home improvement store, and the sight of her choosing curtains and carpets left an impression on me. On the way to the new house, I couldn't help but laugh at the sight of my mother taking out the items we bought from a bag and gazing at them. Here it is, our new home. When I said that to my parents in front of the house, I noticed something was off.
Huh? What are you doing here?
In front of us was the newly built house that hadn't yet blended in with the surrounding residential area. That was the two-family house where we would live with my parents. For some reason, my mother-in-law and husband were standing at the front door.
Oh, you finally made it. Jennifer has the key, right? Come on, let's go in.
As soon as I stopped the car, my husband approached me with a smile. Seeing my parents' anxious faces in the rearview mirror, I got out of the car first.
Explain properly before we go in. Why is your mother here too? If you were gonna invite her, you should have waited until things settled down more.
I had absolutely no intention of actually inviting her, but I chose my words to avoid stirring things up as much as possible. My mother-in-law, standing next to my husband, was carrying unusually large luggage and had an intimidating smile as if trying to dominate the situation.
Hey, what are you talking about? Don't say invite like we're strangers. Mom is a resident here too.
My thought process stopped at the unbelievable words released by my husband's cheerful voice. My husband looked at my face and grinned, but I didn't miss it.
You've had a face like you're wondering why Mom is here since earlier. If anything, that's my line. I didn't hear anything about your parents being here. Did you really think I was seriously building a house for your parents? What are you saying?
My husband's attitude and words up until now had gone back to how they were before. I consulted with my parents and bought this house for them. My husband just barged in from the side and made various demands. I can't believe he would betray me like this, and in front of my parents no less.
This is the home for us as a married couple and my mom. We decorated it to my mom's tastes. I let you do as you pleased since you didn't say anything. What's wrong with that? It's your responsibility for bringing them here without permission. That's why I'm gonna live here with my mom. I'm sorry for your parents, but from now on, they'll have to go into a nursing home.
Malice oozed from my husband's words spoken with a half-smile. At that sight, my body trembled and my vision gradually blurred. Anger welled up, and I felt like I would be crushed by the strong emotions I was feeling for the first time.
You see, Jennifer, this was my goal from the beginning. I didn't like how you avoided my mom. Mom tried to get along with you and started this living arrangement. But you deliberately kept your distance, so Mom was sad the whole time. And then you brought up divorce? And living with your own parents? I was surprised when you said that. It might have been a bit unfair, but I tried to finish the house without telling you. Now that it's done, we can't just stop living together at this point. Plus, we've been living with Mom this whole time, so it would be weird to suddenly stop. You're the one who started this in the first place, so properly convince your parents.
Being told such childish reasoning in a condescending way, something broke inside me. Even though my parents and the neighbors were watching, I said clearly without caring.
I see your true nature now. If you want to live in this house so badly that you'd lie, go ahead. But I'm divorcing you right here and now. I won't see you two ever again.
Saying that, I immediately got in the car. My husband was saying something, but my boiling head couldn't take in his words. My father was startled because I had accelerated the car suddenly.
Wait, what happened? What's going on?
He asked like that, but he sensed something from my expression. My mother stopped my father, and we left in that heavy atmosphere. It was a small mercy that cleaning up my parents' house wasn't finished yet. When we returned there, boxes were piled up at the entrance. The belongings that should have been in the new house were there. After dropping off my parents first, I also parked the car and entered my parents' house.
I'm sorry you packed for us. I'll settle things quickly so we can move right away.
Maybe I should have pushed my husband and the others aside and entered the new house right then and there. I didn't have to run away since the deed to that house is in my name. However, I couldn't stand that what I had built up over a long time was destroyed by my husband's actions. That's why I chose to escape from there. If I had been more put together, my parents wouldn't have had to suffer this much. I felt angry that even at a time like this, all I could do was blame myself. Even so, I was determined to take back that house. So I tried to have discussions by calling my husband many times every day. However, my husband's response was always the same.
We're worried about you too, Jennifer. But you know, I've never heard of someone getting divorced to take care of their parents. Isn't it better to enrich our married life? You're my wife, and you should treat my mom as your parent too. It's only natural to live with your husband's parent, right? If you apologize and change your attitude, I'll let bygones be bygones. We can think about your parents after that.
The reason I proposed divorce wasn't just to take care of my parents, but because I couldn't stand my mother-in-law's constant harassment and my husband's behavior in going along with it. Living together in that situation is impossible. And why do I need to apologize in the first place? When I insisted on that point, he just ignored my feelings, saying, a husband and wife will understand each other's importance if they live together. A wife should listen to what her husband says. And he wouldn't agree to a divorce. However, with my single-minded desire to cut ties with this parent and child soon, I called many times and hinted that I was considering divorce mediation. I felt that things wouldn't move forward if I didn't do that. Sure enough, my husband was shaken by the word mediation and reluctantly agreed to the divorce. He mailed me the divorce papers he had filled out, I signed them and submitted them, so the divorce was officially finalized. I explained to my parents that all that was left was to have them vacate the house, and they understood, but reality didn't go that smoothly. My ex-husband and his mother showed no sign of leaving even though they knew the new house was in my name and I was paying the mortgage. No matter how many times I urged them to leave, they just made excuses like work is busy, we need to go to the hospital, we have to redo the moving preparations from scratch. They had arbitrarily sold the house they originally lived in and moved into the new one, so it wasn't a situation where I could easily kick them out. I could easily imagine the two of them continuing to squat in the new house, so I made up my mind. Even so, time passed quickly, and exactly 1 month after the divorce, my attachment to the house had faded. The divorce was finalized and I had already notified the bank and real estate company about it. If I couldn't do anything about it at this point, living at my parents' house wouldn't be so bad, and I no longer felt like going back to the house where my ex-mother-in-law had once lived. However, what I was concerned about was the mortgage issue. I'm not wealthy, so it's difficult to keep paying the mortgage on a house I'm not even using. Plus, I have no obligation to support the life of my ex-husband and his mother, who are now strangers. As I was brooding over this, I got a call from my ex-husband. Since he never contacted me regularly, I was surprised and answered the phone, and he said,
"There's no way I can pay it all at once. What are you thinking?"
Before even saying hello, my ex-husband's angry voice pierced my ear. Hearing a voice I had never heard before, I reflexively fell silent. Then my husband continued in irritation.
"I just got a call from the bank. They were talking about mortgage payments or something. When I said I didn't know, they told me I have a payment obligation. What's that supposed to mean?" You're the one who built the house, right? At least pay the mortgage. You made me look like a fool.
Maybe because he was excited, some of my husband's words were hard to understand, but basically, this is what it was about. We're divorced, and I don't live in that house. I've told the bank and real estate company these 2 points. Since you and your mother are living in that house, please have one of you get approved and make the mortgage payments together. The bank understands that I intend to transfer the deed, so don't worry. I think that was the gist of the message. When I calmly explained this, my ex-husband showed even more anger and loudly argued back.
Who cares? You went ahead with that without telling me. It was your house to begin with, so you should pay. The deed won't change until I accept it, so your credit will take a hit if it stays like this.
However, there was no strength in my ex-husband's voice, and it sounded somehow anxious. This was proof that he had lost his composure.
Oh? So you knew it was my house and you're forcibly squatting there. But since we have no relationship anymore, you shouldn't have the right to live there. By the way, I have no lingering attachment to that house anymore. A used house that other people lived in. I don't want to be involved with the house where my ex-husband and his mother lived. So what are you gonna do? You plan to keep living there without paying? Or are you gonna leave in a few days? I'm happy to go to court. You can choose whichever method you like.
My ex-husband was furious, but I stayed calm, to the point where I wondered why I had been jerked around by him until now. On the other hand, he suddenly fell silent. Given his personality, he's probably worried about appearances. He's intimidated by the word court. The mortgage is in the millions of dollars, and it would be much easier to transfer the deed and make payments. He should have a higher income than me. When I pointed out that fact, the call suddenly cut off. I had a vague feeling of why my ex-husband was hesitating to pay. I had once witnessed him drunkenly scattering the contents of his wallet. I had picked up things he had dropped when he approached as if to grab whatever he could get his hands on. He wasn't good at organizing, and his wallet was always stuffed with receipts and unfamiliar credit cards. There was no evidence of cheating there, but I had a bad feeling when I saw the heavily used cards. His mother frequently demanded expensive bags and appliances, and he provided them without hesitation. They were probably all on revolving payments. Considering there were sometimes envelopes from unknown places in the mailbox, he may have been behind on payments. He had contacted me because he was complaining that he couldn't pay it all at once. He probably didn't pass the screening for a mortgage. He had hung up because he didn't want me to know that, but I had already seen through everything. A week passed with no contact from my ex-husband. So I formally hired the lawyer I had been consulting with, confirmed that my ex-husband and his mother were still living in the house under my name, and had them send a certified letter. The letter clearly stated that they had to vacate the house immediately or a lawsuit would be filed, so after a few days, my ex-husband and his mother finally left the house reluctantly. I thought that if they were so afraid of a lawsuit, they should have moved out from the beginning, but I didn't say anything unnecessary because I wanted to cut ties with them quickly. After that, I visited the house I had decided to sell and checked its condition with a real estate company employee. It was painful to tell my parents I was selling the house. Especially my mother, who had been looking forward to life in the new house, showed a moment of sadness on her face when she heard the news. But she immediately looked at my father, smiled, and hugged me, saying, "We can only be grateful that Jennifer prepared everything for us. It's a bit disappointing about the house, but as long as we can spend time with Jennifer from now on, it'll be fun no matter where we are." After selling the house, the money left over after offsetting the mortgage was small, but I switched my mindset to enjoying a new life with my parents. About 6 months later, I suddenly got a call from my lawyer. It didn't seem to be an emergency, but my heart was somewhat unsettled. The lawyer told me that my ex-husband and his mother had barged into my old family home. However, we were no longer there and another family was living there, so the lawyer was contacted. I hadn't told my ex-husband that fact, so they must have been surprised. I kind of wanted to see that reaction, but I didn't go out of my way to meet them face to face. Instead, I asked the lawyer to give them a letter. I told them it was pointless to contact my previous company since I had recently changed jobs, and I had asked my old workplace to ignore any contact after the divorce. I didn't want to cause trouble for others with my personal problems, so I reiterated that my ex-husband shouldn't contact them. And I wrote that I had bought a small house in a completely unrelated place using some money my father had won in the lottery, and that I was living a smooth life. I mentioned that it was more urban and had better transportation than where I used to live, but I didn't write the details to avoid being identified. I thought that if they knew we were living a good life, they would desperately search for us, and that was the bare minimum revenge. The lawyer casually told me about my ex-husband and his family's recent situation. Apparently, while chasing after me, my ex-husband had welcomed a new wife, but he had been vague when talking about that fact. My ex-husband, who was fairly good-looking, had somehow luckily remarried a rich beauty, but it seems they broke up after just 1 month. The reason for the divorce was, of course, the intervention of his mother once again. They had imposed harsh demands on the new wife, saying she couldn't have a job, had to do perfect housework, and had to have a child within 3 years or they would divorce, which was too unreasonable to even say out loud. The new wife, surprised by my ex-husband's change in attitude from before the marriage, immediately ran away to her parents' house, but came back with her angry parents. The two of them, who had been confident that if the new wife left, they could just find a new woman, were grabbed by the collar by the new wife's father and sternly scolded never to hurt a woman again. They were made to write divorce papers on the spot, so they were thoroughly reprimanded. The lawyer said my ex-husband had consulted him, and he was struggling with whether to take on the case. Prefacing it with, "I don't think there's much chance of meeting my ex-husband and his mother in the future," the lawyer said he would not contact me going forward. This was a consideration to avoid the risk of information leakage, as the lawyer was the only connection between me and my ex-husband. I expressed my gratitude and left the law office. From now on, I'll live for myself. I made up my mind to spend peaceful days with my parents without getting caught up with weird men anymore. After that, I was able to spend my days calmly without incident. I got caught up with a ridiculous parent and child, but even so, my life is just beginning. Thinking of it as a valuable experience, I'll enrich my life from now on. With that determination, I decided to pour myself into the work in front of me.